South Gyeongsang Province, Daejeon City, North Gyeongsang Province, and South Jeongseon Province are important places in this regard. South Gyeongsang Province has the most concentrated defense industry in South Korea. Gangwon City and the surrounding area are the center of the South Korean military industry, producing almost every weapon system, including MBTs, self-propelled howitzers, Navy ships, submarines, small arms systems, engines, and parts. Major manufacturers such as Hanwha Aerospace, Hyundai Rotem, Hanwha Ocean, and STX Engine are located here. Daejeon City is the home of Korean Aerospace Industries, which produces aerospace weapons such as jet fighters, space launch vehicles, and satellites. Daejeon City, the largest city in central South Korea, is another important location in the defense industry sector. This city and the surrounding region are home to numerous main and subordinate military offices and training facilities. In addition to the Defense Development Agency, a government-affiliated R&D institute has been inventing and providing the most critical weapons technologies for the past 5 decades. Last year, the Defense Acquisition Program Administration also moved its headquarters to Daejeon City. This is the second Defense Industry Innovation Cluster region to receive financial and legal support from the central government to promote the production and sale of new high-tech weapon systems such as drones, EOIR satellites, and MUMT. 2 other provinces, North Gyeongsang and South Jeongseon, are also jumping on the booming industrial train with their local industrial policies. Taking all this into account, it is clear that South Korea's defense industry is expanding globally and locally, while also achieving successes on the economic and technological fronts. We are not sure whether South Korea will ever truly become a weapons designer, manufacturer, and exporter on par with the best in this sector outside the US, such as France, Germany, Italy, and Israel. However, as the current Yoon Suk-yeol government claims to occupy 5% of the global arms market and become the number 4 global arms exporter by 2027, the public-private partnership perspectives suggest the roadmap for the near future looks solid. Of course, the devil is always in the details. In other words, North Korea's disturbing moves towards South Korea could undermine the Seoul government's understanding of the military defense industry. Many prominent analysts have expressed skepticism about the much-cited reports concluding that North Korea has decided to declare war on South Korea, arguing that Pyongyang's provocative military buildup is more aimed at intimidating the South into submission. One of South Korea's primary goals right now is to confuse North Korea, which has shifted its main focus to the war in Ukraine. Unwilling to do so with a direct war, South Korea could militarily support Ukraine to eliminate North Korean soldiers fighting in KSK. Seoul has already signaled that it would support Kyiv with military aid packages. In this process, we could be confronted with a Gangseo medium-range surface-to-air missile system in northeastern Ukraine that could target the KSK Oblast. South Korean troops do not need to operate this vehicle. Seoul could provide it to Kyiv through the United States. But if Pyongyang continues to overstep its boundaries, Seoul could send military experts directly to the Ukrainian battle line to fire the Chunggang-2, optimized to destroy low-level ballistic missile threats. This system could neutralize North Korea's supply of such equipment to Russia. We could also see South Korea's 9 self-propelled howitzers fired against Russian and North Korean troops on the KSK. These howitzers could destroy North Korean troops attempting to infiltrate from KSK toward Sui. This could lead to a conflict between Russia and North Korea over which side's troops will be cannon fodder. The scenario of K-2 main battle tanks entering KSK could also come up. Russia, which has serious tank shortages, may have difficulties countering South Korea's K-2 tank offensive. North Korea may also want to respond to this tank move not only in KSK but also on the South Korean borderlines. In such an environment, it could be an invitation to 2 different wars on 2 different continents. Perhaps this is what Kim Jong-un wants. The Pyongyang leader may have decided to send troops to fight for Russia just to get South Korea involved in the war in Ukraine. The North Korean leader's new concept recognizes that South Koreans are a different foreign people. This change in the constitution of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, this breaking of the unification arch, now says that North and South Korea are completely different nations. This could give Kim Jong-un reason not for an internal conflict, but for a conflict with an enemy in a foreign country. With South Korea involved in the war in Ukraine, Kim could adapt it to a war of his own choosing in the Pacific. War experts believe that Kim Jong-un sees Ukraine as a training ground for North Korea. So in this calculation, Kim Jong-un is not sending troops to Ukraine to help Putin, but to train and apply his skills to the South Koreans. But would Kim abandon Putin and focus solely on the expected war between South Korea and North Korea? It seems unlikely at the moment because both countries have signed a joint military agreement to support each other. And this agreement will support both the war in Eastern Europe and the expected clash in the Pacific. Russia will continue to receive troop aid from North Korea while at the same time supporting it in the Pacific. This is likely to be with the Russian Navy. Putin could deploy the Pacific Fleet. The Pyongyang government, which is considering the possibility of this assistance, has recently made it clear that they will not leave Putin alone. So it seems that Russia and North Korea will continue to act as an intelligence partnership, both in Eastern Europe and in the Pacific. Of course, North Korea is unlikely to start a new war at the moment, but it will try to intimidate South Korea with the support of Russia. And in fact, Pyongyang had last tested a ballistic missile for this purpose. As you may recall, South Korea and Japan reported that North Korea launched an intercontinental ballistic missile that lasted 86 minutes. The longest flight ever recorded, and then fell into the waters east of the country. The ballistic missile was fired at a sharply elevated angle and reached up to 7,000 km. The launch violated UN restrictions and came at a time of deteriorating relations between the two Koreas, with Pyongyang adopting increasingly aggressive rhetoric toward Seoul. Seoul's defense ministry said the test was aimed at developing weapons capable of firing farther and higher. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un told state media on the same day that the launch was a clear message to his enemies and described it as an appropriate military action. The United States, for its part, characterized the missile launch as a clear violation of several UN Security Council resolutions. The White House National Security Council spokesperson said in a statement that this demonstrates that North Korea continues to prioritize its illicit weapons of mass destruction and ballistic missile programs over the welfare of its people. Neighboring China has also expressed concern. Before this test, in defiance of long-standing and crippling UN sanctions, Pyongyang had fired an ICBM in December 2023, which traveled for 73 minutes and covered nearly 1,000 km. North Korea is now testing ballistic missiles again and is now testing the pulse of the West and South Korea. If South Korea, with the support of its Western allies, goes to war against North Korea in the Pacific after this move, Russia will be on high alert, and Putin will use the opportunity to change the terms of the war in Eastern Europe. That's the story. So far, there has been no active retaliation from South Korea. South Korea has announced that it will impose new sanctions on the North in response to the launch. Following the launch, South Korean and U.S. officials met and agreed to take strong and diverse response measures. The South Korean military said in a statement that most recently, South Korea announced sanctions against 11 individuals and 15 organizations involved in illegal military cooperation between Russia and North Korea. The sanctions took effect on December 19th. The sanctioned individuals include senior North Korean officers deployed to Russia and a senior missile engineer in the North Korean military, as well as an elite unit and its commander. the Storm Corps, deployed to Russia's war in Ukraine. The sanctions list also includes 13 entities, including 7 Russian individuals and several banks. Seoul accuses them of facilitating arms trade between Russia and North Korea, providing North Korean telecommunications equipment to the Russian military, and aiding North Korea's nuclear and missile program. The sanctions mean that financial transactions with these entities will be subject to Seoul's prior approval. The clients do. Alongside the restraining orders, South Korea has pledged economic and humanitarian support to Ukraine and recently provided a $100 million loan to help keep Kyiv's budget afloat. All these steps against the threat of Russia, North Korea, and China, combined with the successes and export records of South Korea's national military defense industry, make both Eastern Europe and the Pacific look like much safer places. If South Korea maintains this resolve, Russia, North Korea, and China will have a much harder time. Seoul's stance will be a major contribution to the US and its allies' strategy to protect the Pacific in particular. Thank you for watching. In recent years, South Korea has stood out on the global stage, becoming one of the world's fastest growing defense exporters, adopting the vision of elevating the country to the status of a global basic state. Yoon Suk-yeol's government advocated 18 policies covering various aspects of foreign affairs, security, trade, technology, and industry. Among these key policies, strengthening defense exports emerged as one of Yoon's flagship initiatives. During his address to the nation, Yoon proudly announced that South Korea had surpassed the milestone of more than $15 billion in defense exports, averaging more than $15 billion annually, reaffirming Seoul's resolute goal of placing South Korea among the top 4 defense exporters globally by 2027. Now, indeed, South Korea has grown from 31st in 2000 to become one of the world's top 10 defense exporters between 2019 and 2023. Against the backdrop of this remarkable growth is a changing global security landscape, particularly intensified by the ongoing war in Ukraine following Russia's invasion. In addition, North Korea's aggression plans and constant threats to ring the war bells have been another cornerstone of South Korea's reasons for increasing its military production and military strength. These conditions pave the way for Seoul's success in the defense industry. South Korea's position as a defense industry giant is backed up by real numbers. By 2024, South Korea's arms exports are estimated to exceed $20 billion. This, of course, seriously disturbs first North Korea and then Russia, which is seen as the second threat to South Korea in the Pacific. But can South Korea maintain its military-industrial dominance despite such dangerous rivals? Can North Korea find a way to block the Seoul government's military advances? What kind of strategy will the South Korean side choose to adopt in the time to come? Before we dive into what is going on in the Pacific and how Seoul is dealing with the Pyongyang-Moscow military cooperation, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and like our content. As we mentioned, South Korea is trying to prioritize its military export capacity in order to prove its military strength against Russia and North Korea. Because if you can export your military resources to different countries, and if the military elements you have are sufficient for your defense power, this creates a huge deterrent. Consider Saudi Arabia's $3.2 billion purchase of Chang'e-2 medium surface-to-air missiles last November. Australia finalizing a $7 billion deal for 129 Redback infantry fighting vehicles last December, and Romania finalizing a $68 billion deal for 300 to 500 K2 main battle tanks in the coming months. These are all recent military export successes for South Korea. In addition, the second phase of the mega deal with Poland for the K2 MBT, 9 self-propelled howitzers, Chunmood multi-barreled rocket launcher system, FA-50 light jet fighter and ballistic cruise missiles was negotiated favorably. South Korean manufacturers had begun to diversify their export portfolio from 6 to 12 major weapon systems and from 4 to 12 importing countries between 2020 and 2023. These important breakthroughs indicate that the South Korean defense industry is indeed globalizing. But while the country's defense industry is global, it is also local. The Korean people are proud of their defense industry known as Gaebangseon, which serves only their national pride. This industry is not only the global pivot state and political belief in their growing military capacity against North Korea, China, and Russia, but also an emerging industrial sector that supports future economic growth. The booming defense industry contributes greatly to the Korean economy in several ways. First, it creates high-quality jobs in struggling manufacturing sectors. In 2022 alone, the rapid growth of defense exports generated at least 300 new jobs, generating about $34 billion in terms of production stimulus impact on other related industries. The central government has been aggressive in promoting arms exports to boost South Korean economic growth and industrial diversification in high-tech industrial structures dominated by several key sectors such as semiconductors, batteries, and automobiles. In particular, the semiconductor industry, led by Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix, has accounted for up to 20% of South Korean exports in recent years. And in this context, the defense industry across land, naval, aerospace, and electronic weapon systems is an excellent alternative, encompassing state-of-the-art technological R&D and traditional manufacturing production. This is because it generates enormous production stimulus effects in key industrial sectors. The defense sector works in tandem with other important high-tech sectors such as semiconductors, electronics, information and communications, automotive, aircraft, shipbuilding, and chemicals. The central government has committed to increasing the amount of research and development subsidies to support small and medium-sized enterprises, including high-tech civilian startups, in particular to accelerate localization in vital materials, components, and equipment sectors over the next decade. This industrial policy aims to build a more advanced and robust industrial ecosystem to support increased arms exports. This is seen as the latest policy initiative to support the maintenance, repair, and refurbishment sector. It confirms South Korea's medium-term defense industrial strategy. For example, South Korea hopes to gain a foothold in the highly competitive American arms market by focusing on the maintenance, repair, and refurbishment policy shift towards the U.S. regional sustainability framework. Similarly, the industry is evolving from providing only what is produced specifically for the South Korean military to producing a more advanced and adaptable weapon system that can be customized to the requirements of importing countries. The first step was taken by the Redback Infantry Fighting Vehicle chassis, which built a prototype specifically for Australian needs. A set of appropriate warfighting concepts and tactics is also required to operate the weapons effectively in the respective importing countries and regions. In this context, the South Korean government is seeking to leverage these dual-use technology industries to upgrade 10 cutting-edge military technologies, with a massive R&D subsidy of up to $2 billion by 2027. South Korea's ambitious goal in this regard is to enter the group of 7 most technologically advanced countries to catch up with the US, Russia, France, Germany, the UK, Italy, and Israel. The technologies identified for competition are artificial intelligence, quantum, space energy, advanced materials, manned and unmanned teamwork, sensors, electro-optics, infrared, gas turbine engines, and responses to weapons of mass destruction. In these areas, South Korea's national industrial strategy is clear and seeks a more comprehensive and technologically integrated defense industry to catch up with the highest levels and eventually reach the level of its Western European counterparts. As these 10 technologies demonstrate, the primary roadmap is to accelerate two-way synergistic interactions between military and civilian technologies beyond the traditional level of the dual-use technology principle. As other leading arms producers, such as the US, Russia, France, China, and Israel have done, South Korea's defense industry currently lacks cutting-edge technologies such as C4ISR, synthetic aperture radar, avionics, MUMT, gas turbine jet engines, submersible submarines, nuclear and military satellite systems. These are the primary goals for the foreseeable future. Several local governments are on this path.